On today's episode, we're talking about Threads and specifically whether social media managers should be using it.
Welcome to JFDI with the Two Lauras. Thank you for tuning into the show again. We are the Two Lauras and we are on a mission to bring you a weekly dose of inspiration and advice to make it easier for you to build a profitable and enjoyable business working in the social media space. So whether you're a social media manager, an ad manager, a content creator, or anything in between, you're in the right place. As Laura has said on the show today, we are talking about Threads, whether we're still using it, whether you should be using it, what's going to happen on there, all of that sort of thing. And if you've got questions after the show, we would love to chat more with you. So come and join us in our free Facebook group. You can find that by going to the socialmediamanagershub.com or just click the link in the show notes. Just pop your email address in the box to join. We will let you in and we can continue the conversation. But for now, let's get on with the show and talk about Threads. Are we still using it? Let's start there, shall we?
Yes, let's.
When Threads very first came out, and we have got a previous episode on this that we can link in the show notes. When it very first came out, Laura and I were like, oh, this is amazing. And we dived right in and got really excited. And I was all over it, very enthusiastic. And I think a lot of people did what we did. They kind of went all in and then just got a bit burnt out and a bit bored and left. And recently, in the past few months, everyone's started coming back, which is interesting. And I've come back to Threads and I am still using it, but I would say I have ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm all in, and other days I forget that the app even exists on my phone.
Yeah, and I go on it probably every day, but I am very much a lurker on there. And we mentioned this the other day, I'll go on there and I'll search for things, but you're I never search for anything.
No.
I will just pop some keyword in that I'm interested in seeing people's opinions in, end up down little rabbit holes. But I very, very rarely engage. And I don't really know. Occasionally I do. And if there's people on there who I know, maybe our members or just people in our world, then I might reply or engage with them, but I wouldn't probably engage outside of my friends. Well, I don't really know why I'm like that. That just seems to be how I do it, because I find Threads a good scroller. It's a good, I've got 5 minutes, I'm going to film
time waster.
Yeah. And I use it probably very similar to Instagram stories. I'm a bit of a lurker. I'm a bit of a lurker everywhere in my older age, I think. But I do think it's interesting. I think I personally see the search function, which obviously wasn't there when we first started, has been a game changer for me, because it means I've got variety. I can go and find lots of different pieces of content. And I remember in the early days, I felt a bit I'd go on there really enthusiastically, and actually there was nothing really new or exciting, or the content, what people were saying was all a bit meh. Whereas now there seems to be much more variety. I think people have found their confidence a bit more with Threads and kind of a bit more brave in how they're using it, I guess, and what they're saying, and that's made it a more interesting place to be.
Yeah, I think lots of people have come over from Twitter, which is good and bad in equal parts. The people who were good on Twitter are good on Threads. The people who are really annoying on Twitter are really annoying on Threads. But there's definitely much more variety in my feed, and I don't use the search function. I find, maybe it's just my app, but I find it just doesn't work very well for me. And all of the things that you're meant to be able to do on Threads, like swiping and all that stuff, I can't do. So maybe it is me in my account. But I see so many different things in my feed that I don't feel like I need the search thing, because we're not using it strategically. If we were using it strategically, that would be a whole different ballgame. But I'm mostly on there from not a personal perspective. It's kind of businessy, but not marketing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think people are showing their personalities more on. I think
100%.
Obviously Instagram is so staged now. Not everybody's accounts, obviously, and some people
even
are more
stories
staged.
Aren't they?
Yeah, it's all. Whereas I try to keep my stories quite raw. not that I share that much, but I think Instagram's a bit kind of your shop window, whereas Threads is a little bit more nitty gritty. It's a bit more, not necessarily behind the scenes, but more personality. And I quite like that. I quite like the the conversational side of it and the chit chat and the banter that you don't get on Instagram.
Yeah, although I do see people very opinionated on Threads, very much like they would have been on Twitter. And they're very much like, this is what you should do rather than this is what you could try to do, which obviously, you know, you've got to have a great hook. So I get it. But equally, they seem to be very confident in what they're saying. And largely, a lot of what they're saying isn't always true. So you kind of have to take a lot of it with a pinch of salt, like you do everywhere. But it seems to be really strong on Threads, in my feed anyway.
Yeah, people seem to be quite confident to comment with their opinion on things to complete strangers. Like we've been on the receiving end of that, which has been quite interesting. But I don't really know why. I wonder why people feel more secure and comfortable to be that way, but then they wouldn't be like that on other platforms potentially.
But is it that they feel more secure and comfortable to do it? Or is it that they're keyboard warriors, they see the content, they can't not do it? Do you know what I mean? They feel like they have to because it's there in front of them.
But then why would they not be doing it on?
Because they don't see it so much, do they? Threads is so much more open, very much like Twitter. So you see a lot more content because someone who you're connected with has commented or whatever, or something's got a lot of engagement and therefore it gets shown to you. And people just don't seem to be able to hold themselves back. So it is, which is the Twitter side of it, isn't it?
But yeah, maybe. It's interesting. I kind of like it, apart from when I'm on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, and then you get the heart palpitations and the Slack messages going, oh my God, I don't like it. Yeah.
Laura, have you seen what this idiot said today? So let's talk. So obviously we've touched on the fact that we're not really using it strategically. And I think to us it's quite, I guess it's informal kind of networking really, isn't it? We've found out about people or got to know people that we didn't really know previously by seeing their threads. So it is good from that perspective, but that's probably as far as, you know, we're using. Occasionally we put content on there or share other content elsewhere, you know, we're wanting people to link out, or we're linking out, should I say, but not really, are we? We're not.
No, and that's not to say that we can't or that we wouldn't, but currently, no. I feel like I don't know whether our business or my personal kind of network has grown. I've come across people who I never had heard of before, which has been like interesting. And I don't know that I would have come across those people elsewhere. So from a business perspective, maybe if we were more strategic, that would happen for us and like people would come across us. So, you know, like I think there's definitely lots of opportunity. But we've got so many other things going on right now. It just doesn't really fit in strategically with what we're doing. And maybe that's a mistake because it is still early days. And obviously the earlier you get involved in a platform, potentially the better. But you've got to bide your time, haven't you? You know, you've got to be realistic with what time and brain space you've got. So personally for me, I am very much like you, using it as like a time filler. If I've got, you know, a bit of time and I'm like, there's nothing on the telly or whatever, I'll go and have a good old scroll through Threads. I might find some new interesting things. I might send you some links, being like, did you know this? And occasionally I might put a thread out if I've got something that I want to say. But there is no strategy behind our Threads content at the moment. It's definitely not a marketing channel for us right now.
Yeah, but it could be, 100%. It? And I think it could also be for social media managers.
Yes, definitely.
Because I see it, and I might be wrong on this, because obviously I'm only a lurker and I only see a tiny amount of threads, but I see it very much as a B2B platform.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm not seeing on there many B2C businesses.
No, like e-com and stuff, you mean?
Yeah.
No, me either.
So like if you're a social media manager and that's your target audience, I don't think they're on there. And obviously the big brands are on there, you know, like Wendy's and what have you. But I don't think small kind of e-commerce type of businesses are on there, or your local plumbers are on there. Like I don't think that. But if your target audience is B2B companies, SaaS companies, they're on there. Would you say that?
Yeah, very heavy on the personal brands on Threads for sure. And like founders and people like that, for definitely. But I don't feel currently like Threads leans towards the e-com businesses because we don't really, like, you can put photos and videos on there, but people are not really consuming content in that way on there that I see. It is very about the written word, and what you're going to like start talking about what your jewelry looks like. It's not quite the same as showing a photo, is it? So I just don't think it's got the same impact. And like, obviously we're not doing it strategically, but I definitely see a difference in when I'm just talking about something that, it might be loosely related to business, but isn't like full on, click this link and go and buy this thing. And we would see that anyway on every platform. But on Threads, I think it's it's astoundingly different. I think it is very much about the conversation.
Yeah, and I guess if you've got let's go with a jewelry company as a client, or that's your niche and that's the kind of clients you want, and their businesses that are wanting to build a personal brand element to their business, and or maybe they're wanting to network more with their B2C and build up their network, then yes, maybe Threads is the place, or could be a place for them. But I don't think it's something that business owner should be outsourcing to a social media manager.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think it's very conversational, it's quite live, and hopefully it will stay that way.
Yeah, I do think, like, where you say it's quite live, I think whereas on Twitter it was very quick paced, and like a conversation on Twitter would either last forever because it's kind of gone viral, or it would die very quickly. I feel like conversations on Threads last longer. People are responding in a longer period sometimes, but it is much more live than maybe like Instagram or whatever.
Yeah. And obviously with content being able to be scheduled onto there now, like when that was announced, we both were like, what? Because it will without doubt, in a year's time, the platform will be very different as a result of people scheduling content.
I would rather see loads of ads on Threads than loads of scheduled content.
Same. Because that's exactly what I hated about Twitter. It was just like people used to throw up a load of content. And I never forget some training that I once did. And it was, you got like a grid, like a matrix for Twitter. And it was like, you schedule at 9 a.m. today, 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m. And then the next day, what you scheduled at 9 a.m. on the Monday, you would put in at 11 a.m. on the Tuesday. And then on the Wednesday, you would put it at 3 p.m. And honestly, it was phenomenally shit. And it was like, that is exactly what is wrong with Twitter. And I just hope that doesn't happen on Threads, because I just think it will ruin it. It will ruin the conversation. We'll end up just having a load of crap content.
And the thing with Threads as well is that the content on there isn't really hot. Well, it may be, but it doesn't come across as really highly thought through, edited, processed. There's not like this amazing hook and then amazing pieces and amazing CTAs. It doesn't have all of that stuff because it's much more quick and on the fly. And if you're in a scheduler and you're doing proper marketing on Threads, then it would have all of that stuff and it will not have the same impact.
No.
Which is a shame.
No, and then of course people will then say, "Oh, when you use a scheduler, your reach is worse when you use a scheduler." It's like, well, it's kind of nothing to do with it is the fact that you've scheduled it, but it's not the scheduler's fault. It's the fact that it's like a spray and pray approach, isn't it, to getting your content out there. And so if you're listening to this thinking, okay, I really want to get into Threads, don't get into it by launching yourself into a scheduler and like putting a load of content out.
No, because you need to be on the platform to have those conversations. And if all you're doing is scheduling and you're never opening the Threads app, you're never having those conversations, your content is never going to land because you're not seeing what's happening on Threads and you're not having those conversations, and your content will be overly produced, which isn't the way that Threads currently is. At some point, it probably will go that way because everyone will be scheduling it and everyone will have really rubbish results, in my opinion. But there was one thing that as well that I've noticed recently. When Threads very first came out, we were all very much, and we actually did a reel showing how you could create like a thread where there's like a thread, then another one, and that they're all linked together. And I see very few people doing that well because most people are doing it because it's like the marketing kind of people who are using Threads for marketing and they're not really getting much traction. Here's the 5 tools that I use for blah, blah. And then it's like a list of, it's very much Twitter kind of thread. And I don't see that kind of content working very well on Threads at the moment because it's too staged and too thought through.
Yeah, you're probably right. And I'm also seeing a lot of people who are the ones who do use the thread feature of actually having a thread of threads. They're not really enticing people to read the full thread.
No.
So their first thread, they hit it with their hook and their main point, and then I kind of carry on scrolling by, and it's only by maybe I've seen someone else commenting it. There's more to that. So I do think, that copywriting skill of being able to pull people through a thread is really needed if that's obviously if you want to have a longer form content.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to test whether it actually works, because obviously I'm only seeing what's happening in my newsfeed, and from what's happening in my newsfeed as an outsider without seeing any data, I don't think that type of content's working. But I would be so intrigued to know if you were to test like grouped threads, whatever they're called, versus like a single thread on the same topic, which would perform better. I think it would be really interesting to know.
Yeah, well, a bit of analytics would help with that, wouldn't it?
Well, totally, yes. I mean, you're not wrong.
Okay, so another thing, which actually you're probably better to explain, because we were talking about this the other day, is that you've seen, and I think you got involved in one, didn't you? I was going to say a Twitter chat. Obviously, it's not a Twitter chat; it's a thread chat.
Yeah.
Like, how did that go? Like, tell us a bit more about that.
So I used to see Twitter chats all the time, and I only used to get involved with them from like a strategic, vaguely perspective. I don't like them, but you can reach more people. And I hadn't seen anyone really using them on Threads until recently when I saw Buffer starting to do it. And Buffer always used to have a Twitter chat, didn't they? Like every week they would do a Twitter chat. So it makes sense for them to move it over to Threads. And it was very much the same format as a Twitter chat would have been. Like they would start with an introduction, they would have a guest, then they would like ask different questions and you would answer those questions. And just like I would when I was on Twitter, I would forget to put like the hashtag that I was meant to be using. I would forget to put answer one and all of that stuff.
Is that how they're linked? So same as a Twitter chat, it's all on a hashtag.
Yeah, so they have a hashtag for their, and Buffer are the only people I've seen doing it pretty well. But so they have a Twitter, oh my God, they have a hashtag on Threads, not on Twitter. This is very confusing. And which obviously links all of the things. But I didn't need to use that hashtag because I was engaging with them. And because Threads currently is still pretty quiet, if you think in comparison to Twitter, I would just see all the posts. So I didn't need to do it that way. But yeah, that did sit, and they didn't get massive engagement, but I wouldn't expect them to yet because they're still pretty new. And people probably don't really know that what it is or why they should get involved with it. And maybe they're a dying thing anyway. I don't know. But yeah, I was commenting on them.
If you think of the main user that has come over, it's Instagram users, and and I'm these are massively sweeping statements, but people who generally are more ingrained in Instagram potentially were never that into Twitter. Yeah. So the whole concept of like Twitter chat is completely new to them. Yeah. So even if they've come over to Threads because obviously it's interlinked with Instagram and they want to give it a go, that whole chat thing could be a completely new concept. So, and I think it's really interesting because I used to like the Twitter chat. I hated the whole hashtag Worcestershire Hour, hashtag Birmingham Hour. I hated those kind of ones, but the good ones that you actually could have interesting conversations. So I think there's an opportunity to get in now if you want to do like a social media chat, but maybe not that broad. Then now it could be a good time to kind of introduce that. And yes, you're going to have to bear in mind that the first few times that you do it, you might not get much engagement. You are going to have to massively promote them. You're going to have to kind of essentially launch them.
And educate around them so that people know what it is.
Exactly, and how they work and what you have to do, and the whole Laura Moore needs to add question 1 and the hashtag. But I do think that could be an opportunity, and to kind of get in early might be a good thing, that you'll be able to establish I can't stop calling them Twitter chats. Establish a Threads chat that you become known for. It's good positioning. People enjoy coming to. You're the one that people think, oh, you are the font of all knowledge because you own this chat. I just think it's a great opportunity, assuming your audience is on Threads. Obviously,
yeah.
If it's not, then you can just ignore that segment of this podcast.
And you'll only really know if it's going to work by testing it anyway. And like Laura's just said, it's going to take you like several attempts to get it off the ground. So don't just test it once and think, oh, this sucked, I'm never going to do it again, because it might be the following week is amazing.
It was a bit like, what was that? Clubhouse. Yeah. When you had a room on Clubhouse, the first time you had a room, it was, small.
Awkward.
And then the next time you maybe roped in a few friends, and then the next time those friends brought some friends, and those rooms grew quite quickly because you put the effort in and you kept coming back and you were consistent with it. So I think if you've got the time and the capacity and are prepared to do it, I definitely think like a weekly chat or something might be quite useful. Maybe we should be doing it, Laura.
Yeah, you knock yourself out.
Yeah, I'll add it to the bottom of the list and we'll see how we get on.
Oh, I love it. But in terms of like with your clients on Threads, I think like Twitter chats potentially could be something that could work for them depending on what industry they're in. But I just don't know whether a social media manager is going to be the best person for that. So I feel like there's going to need some buy-in from the client. Like if you've got a client like Wendy's or like Nature's Valley are amazing on Threads, and there's some other like of these like big brands who people know really well, they're brilliant on Threads because they just post funny stuff. But we don't all have clients who will allow us to do that, and B, it kind of aligns with the strategy. Like those brands don't need to do anything more than brand awareness. So the clients who you need more than brand awareness and you want them on Threads, I just feel like you're going to need so much buy-in from them because the brand voice needs to be so strong on Threads, much more than anywhere else, I think, because it needs to sound so much more personal. And I feel like it's going to be difficult. I don't feel like it's impossible at all, but to do it and to do it well, I think will be very difficult. But Twitter was very similar, I think, quite difficult for that. Yeah. Less so, I think, than Threads currently as it stands, because it feels so personal and so personal brand led.
And you've got to really know the industry, I think. And this is potentially why, niching is really useful. Because if you can really understand that industry, maybe you stand more of a chance of acting on behalf of that brand on Threads, and because you're knowledgeable and you can answer straight away, you can hold the conversation about that product or business or service or whatever it may be. Because I do think I think it would be incredibly hard. Like if my clients were to turn around tomorrow and say, right, I think we need to be on Threads, I'd be like, knock yourself out. I can guide you, I can give you a bit of advice, I can give you a bit of tips on how a thread works. But I don't think I can act on their behalf.
No, unless it was a completely different strategy that's like the whole humorous side, like I've just said. Like if you think of like the car map, it's really good on Threads because they're just funny. And it's just, I think it's just difficult to not do that and still be good like for a client. I don't know, I just find I'd be fascinated to hear from any social media managers who are doing it for clients. So let us know if you are.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd be really interested to hear that, because I think if you hadn't kind of listened to this podcast and you didn't really understand it from that perspective, and a client says, I want to go on Threads, you go, oh, great, I can charge them a few £100, 500 quid or whatever. I'm going to pop a load of content in a scheduler and bash it out. I don't think you will be doing your client a good service if you do that. Like that is just not, it's just going to fall flat. Like, fair enough, 5 years time, maybe, a year's time even, maybe that won't be the case and you can do it. But I think as it stands now, I think it's very difficult for a social media manager to act on behalf of a client personally.
I think you could work with a client, strategize, talk about things they should be talking about, that kind of thing. And especially if it's personal brand who is like maybe like not very confident about talking about themselves, that sort of stuff. I think that could work really well, training them on the platform and whatnot.
Yeah, you could definitely do a bit like people do with LinkedIn profiles. You know, you can do that work for them behind the scenes to help them to establish what they should be saying, but they've got to be the ones probably on there having those conversations.
Yeah.
It's like me going to a networking event face-to-face networking event on behalf of my client.
Yeah.
I would not do that.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't do that, then why would you essentially do an online networking, which is essentially very much Threads at the moment?
Yeah, because you're not just talking about the business. There's very much a personal element on there. Like people are talking about, I don't know, like who they're dating and what Netflix shows they're watching and that sort of stuff, as well as what they're doing in business. So,
you know, I've not shared who I'm dating.
Oh, let's not tell Neil. But yeah, I think there's, and it is that kind of behind the scenes kind of aspect to the content that's doing well. Like somebody might be sharing some really great Pinterest tips, for example, but in that same thread they might be talking about like how horrendous their morning has been with their kid. So it is much more personal than just a carousel on Instagram would be potentially.
Yeah, I agree. So I definitely think there are opportunities for social media managers in terms of growing your network and growing your presence and your positioning. But I'm on the fence as to whether I think it's a platform that could be outsourced to a social media manager. But as Laura said before, we would absolutely love to hear from social media managers who are doing a good job on behalf of clients. Like, we'd be genuinely really interested. So do come and tell us. We're on Instagram at The Two Lauras, or you can head to our Facebook group, which is the socialmediamanagershub.com, or just search for that on Facebook.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes as well. That's it then. Maybe we'll see you on Threads.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
But we'll definitely see you same time, same place next week.
Toodles!
Hurrah!